You're listening to the 4-Phase Cycle podcast with your hosts, Dr. Alex and Megan of ZESTY Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you've definitely come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and best friends, we use the 4 phases of the female cycle in combination with functional lab work and mindset practices to transform the lives of the women we work with.
We also have a whole lot of fun along the way. If you're new around here, it's best to start with season 1 before jumping around and plan to roll up your sleeves. Showing up for ourselves and enjoying our lives is what good health is all about. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making changes.
Everybody, welcome back to the 4-Phase Cycle podcast. This is a special day. I don't know how long it's been since we've had a Dr. Alex and Megan together episode.
Hello, we are so excited about it.
Right? Okay, cool. So thank you for being here. Thank you for always sending your feedback and leaving your reviews. We really super appreciate it. It helps other women who are out there struggling find us. And we always appreciate you and we'd love your feedback. So feel free to email us, find us on Instagram and connect. So speaking of connect, we have noticed a pattern lately. So now we've been at this. We were talking about we've been at this health thing and building our business in ZESTY Ginger for 8 years now. And since there's been so many women from healthy hormones early on, or just that we've worked with over the years that have gotten to a place where their health is no longer a concern, or it's very easily managed, or, they're always up leveling at the same time. They're just in a place where they're now saying, I'm ready to do something with this great health I have. And we have lots of women coming to us saying, I want to be a coach. I want to do something like you do, or I want to run an online business. And this is exactly what happened with me. I went into a holistic nutritionist when I was I was a mechanical engineer working in a corporate office, right? Sitting in my cubicle every day. And after I worked with her, turned my health around, I was like, I can't even believe what you do as a job. This is so cool. I loved working with her. I loved she dug into mindset just like I love. And in that process, that moment, I'm going to do this. I want to do this. So that was the switch for me. And I know that happens to a lot of women that go through our program. They maybe just don't feel super aligned. I loved engineering and the design aspect of it. What I didn't love was the environment it was just a very male dominated, old school corporate environment. And that part wasn't super aligned. So not being in a cubicle definitely has served my soul. And being in a place where not only do we get to do what we do, love what we do, but to be able to do it from home, to be able to stop and go to my child's performance at school, just to have the freedom to still help people in a way and get inspired by that every day and have the freedom. So that's been amazing for us. And we know a lot of other women are now asking, how can I do this? So we started thinking about what are the things we wish we had known going into building a business or becoming a coach, or even, just being, maybe you're an executive at a company, but how do you use the things we've learned? How do you use the things like getting the most out of your cycle? There we go. Optimizing, that's the word, optimizing your cycle by the phases so that we can be our most productive self. And once we really started to tap into that, we saw huge shifts in our productivity. Really, more for me, it was the overwhelm and getting rid of the anxious thoughts. It was like, oh, okay, now I know why my body wants to rest right now. And now I know why I'm ready to go. And I could just really use that to my advantage. One of the things we've noticed, and this, just happened to be how it worked out for us. But a lot of the mentors we've had amazing business mentors over the years have been males, right? And we've loved their insights and we've learned so much from them. And we've always had this thing in the back of our head, like, yeah, but um, they don't have a period, right? Yeah, but they don't have a cycle. Yeah, but, or kids or whatever it is. And so taking what we've learned from those mentors and then applying on top of it the things that we know as females with cycles, as people who've had in the past HPA axis dysfunction or this propensity to lean towards hormone imbalances and adrenal burnout. That's a different scenario than some of the males that we've learned from. So we love bringing this together. One of the mentors that we've had is James Wedmore, who actually we're going to be on his podcast soon. It's coming up on the 26th. And we had such an amazing conversation with him. We went down. He's really one of the main reasons we enjoy James so much is that he brings the woo-woo into business. Like he brings alignment into business. He brings manifestation into business. He brings the idea of how important your energy is versus just forcing, right? Versus just like you have to hustle, you have to grind, you have to never sleep. And so we love that. So using what we've learned from him and then applying our cycle structure on top of that has been incredibly powerful. So today we want to dig into how we use the 4 phases of our cycle in business. And Dr. Alex is going to illuminate us. And we'll just go ahead and start with phase 1, right? Dr.
Yeah,
Alex?
totally. So really the entire goal here is to take the experiences that women tend to have as they do anything and highlight how it fits within the structure of what our bodies and brains are already doing at any given time, right? So Megan and I are huge believers in flowing with the current of what's already working in our favor.
Pun intended there.
Oh my
Flow.
gosh, I didn't even get it. Yeah. All right. We do what we can, guys. And the experience of that is a lot different than the concept of pushing forward and forcing things to happen. Because here's the reality. Megan and I absolutely used to do that. We would be like, screw what we think, feel, and believe, right? We know, quote unquote, or we understood at least what we needed to get done and what our goals were. And we were very, like type A goal oriented people that knew through being in school forever that if you set your mind to it and you push through it, then you kind of meet your goals, except for in the process of doing that stuff, we burn ourselves out, right? The reason Megan needed to go to the holistic nutritionist is because she felt like garbage doing the work, right? And you've heard our stories here on the podcast. We don't need to go into that again. And I, as successful as I was in medical school and residency and all of that stuff, you also all know how much I actually burned out my body and created a lot of health struggles along the process, right? So success in one area of life at the expense of other areas of your life is not true success, is something that we really realized, right? Because that approach society does as a compartmentalization of our lives, right? You're an entrepreneur in one way or a health coach one way, and then you have your relationship and you have your who you are as a parent, right? And they're all separate as if they don't feed off one another. And so as we realized that all of us had to come on the up leveling journey and all of us had to be consistent with who we were becoming, then we had to catch up these other parts of our life, up to this whole process. And that is why you'll hear as we talk about how we can support ourselves moving forward with our biggest goals and dreams in the setting of our cycle, it's not different from the other cycle related things that we've taught on the podcast, where it's a different flavor because it's a focus more on entrepreneurship, how you can be, creating the goals and the outcomes that you want in your life. But there's a lot of crossover and similarities by design, right? Because we are not different in our entrepreneurship or health coachship than we are in our everyday life. It's just one extension of who we really are. And so the same tenets will apply, but the examples will be a little bit different. So this kind of sets that up. So, what are the things that female entrepreneurs and people who are creating careers and ways of being that are more in alignment with our greatest vision for the world that we have, how can we bring our own best selves and our talents to the forefront to help add our voice into the conversation of where the world's already headed? Right. And so this is, as we apply this to that concept, it really is just asking, how do I need to show up for myself so that I can get my voice out there in the most powerful, aligned, strong version of myself as possible? Here's the thing. A lot of women, entrepreneurs or not, are living off a couple good weeks per month, maybe just one, maybe three. But either way, it has to be this whole cohesive life, not this up and down of I feel like garbage part of the time. So then I have to make up for it in my good weeks, and up and down I go. And then we're always feeling like we're behind. The other thing that happens is that a lot of times we have inconsistent energy, partly because we've burned ourselves out. And Megan's going to talk about that at the end. And partly because we aren't actually giving ourselves that sort of action and rest dynamic, the ratio that supports us. And so then, because we're not having consistent energy, our creativity and our productivity suffers. So we sit and say, in the next 3 weeks, I'll create this project. And then 2.5 weeks go by and we're like, that project is nowhere near done. And then what most of us do is turn it into guilt and shame, right? That's like the common denominator for all of this stuff. And then we make it mean something about our own personality. If only I had willpower. If only I was more driven, right? And then what entrepreneurs will do is let's buy more courses. Let's do more things, right? Let's do this. Let's hire this coach. And we'll talk about that. We hire coaches, we do programs, but they're not a replacement for us understanding how we best function, right? We do that work so that when we go into the programs, we get the absolute most out of them. When we work with coaches, we are functioning at the top of their game in the way that they're helping us do that. And so they're really functioning as augmentors for the good work and the focused effort that we're doing for ourselves internally. So we created a guide to address all of these quote unquote problems. They're just manifestations of not being quite in alignment, right? And so we'll go through each of the phases here and we'll outline some of the best ways to utilize it. And then there's going to be more in the guide itself. So we'll link up in the show notes how you can grab this guide for yourself. And please share it with the women in your life. We are making this a free guide. We're just giving it out to share as widely as possible, because Megan and I believe that women living out their passions in the world is what's going to heal this world, right? A lot of the problems that we have, a lot of the things that we're doing, how can we allow women to step into their power and create that? And so with that, just keep that in mind, that it's not just for you, but anyone else that you know that's has big dreams, has big goals, and is trying to change the world, please share them with us. It's going to be huge for all of us together. All right, Meg, should we dig into
Beautiful.
phase one?
Yes, let's go right to phase one. So we are going to
Okay.
be connecting with more of you, and at the end we'll share. Texting us is going to be a great spot to kind of text us. You can either say coach or business if you want more details on guides and some connections and trainings that we'll have coming up. So we will definitely share that, but also check out the show notes.
Yes. Okay. All right. So let's, most of you all here know this, but generally, phase one kicks off when we get our period. Okay. So that's really while a lot of times people think of it as the end, when it comes to the brain setting up the whole cycle, when we have our period, that's our little reset. Right. And so phase one is characterized, from the time we get our period to about 7 days later, depending on how long your cycle is. Phase two picks up at that point and ends with ovulation or attempted ovulation, whatever you have going on. Well, if you don't have a cycle, sit tight for just a minute and I'll explain that. Then phase three happens right after we ovulate. So from that point until about 7 days later. And then phase four is from that point to the next time we get our period. Right. So if you have about a 28-day cycle, it's about 7 days of each. If yours is slightly longer, it could be 5 or 6 days of each. If it's or shorter, then it's 5 or 6 days. If it's longer, 7 or 8, it doesn't matter. You are where you are, but that's about how it shakes out. Now, if your cycle is unpredictable or you don't have one, or things have happened to like your uterus that allow you to, you have a cycle, but it doesn't show up as a regular period, there's either you can listen back to season one. There's ways to track ovulation and help you find your own internal cycle without having a period. Or one of the easiest ways to go about it is to switch to the 28-day cycle of the moon, because it just lined up so beautifully like that we actually have an external cycled thing in our universe that actually mirrors what we have going on as women. So, if you have your own cycle, having a cycle tracking app like MyFlow is our current favorite right now. You can track that. Otherwise, you get a moon app. My favorite one is just called Moon. And every 7 days, just like in a cycle, you're going to follow the phases. So phase one is new moon to first quarter moon. Phase two is first quarter moon to full moon. Phase three is full moon to third quarter moon. And phase four is from third quarter moon to the new moon again. Right? So either way, whatever you have going on, it does not matter. You can do this kind of stuff. What's interesting about people that we've gotten feedback from women who follow this is that lots of women come back and say, I had an irregular cycle, so I followed the moon, and now my cycle is synced up with the moon. We have no idea why this happens, so don't ask. And it just sounds really woo. It's just something we hear over and over again, and it is what it is. We can't really explain it, but we both believe in letting the world be as magical as it can be instead of trying to think our way through every single thing, right? So if that happens to you, great. You just switch to your own cycle and follow that, and off you go. So, okay. So phase one then. Phase one, when we are kicking off everything and setting up the month, this is where, with entrepreneurship and goals and setting up your goals and dreams and actually making them happen, phase one is characterized by introspection and planning. This is our opportunity where our brain is really geared up for listening and cross-linking across our hemispheres, right? The right and left side of the brain, where we can access stored information, insights, our beliefs. And that is where we take planning and seeing the bigger picture from that standpoint to decide what is it that we need to do this month that's going to give us the biggest bang for our buck. What's the biggest impact that we can make, right? And so during these 7 days or however long it is for you, this is where Megan and I do a lot of activities that help us get clear on the goal. So generally what we're doing is saying, where am I now? Getting a realistic picture of what's going on, and then setting our GPS. What's point B? Where are we trying to get to? And then doing the planning to see how can we navigate the roads to get from point A to point B. Now, this isn't what I want to get done in a year, right? The reason it's so beautiful to follow the cycle is that it is only about a month. And that is why we don't have to set these huge, grandiose goals. I'm going to get 1,000,000 downloads from zero, right? It's not like that. It's, I have an opportunity every single month, month after month, no matter if I fall off the wagon, if I mess up, I choose the wrong thing, it doesn't matter. You just have a next cycle again and you replan and reset your GPS. So there's no, when we do it this way, there's no getting it wrong. We don't have to heap on the guilt and shame, right? And so it's this iterative process where we can set goals that say, over this month, what would be the most impactful thing to do? And then during phase one, we get really clear on how can we plan for getting there. Now, our favorite way to do this is to come up with 1 to 3 month-long goals, cycle-long goals. What if this month, by the time it ended, what would we feel really good having had done? And what would make the most impact for reaching the people we want to serve, connecting with other people that are in the space that we want to interface with, right? Getting our message out there, whether that's starting a podcast, planning a podcast, whatever it is, what's going to move the needle forward for you. So during this time, our goal really is to get quiet enough, which means not as much outward action. It's a lot of it looks like sitting at the park, or in Megan's case, at the beach, thinking and reflecting and actually making difficult decisions. But when we are caught in the rat race of our to-do list and things that we need to do, we don't have the time and space where our brain is primed to see that big picture. But if we're lost in the weeds, we still can't see it. It doesn't matter how well the brain is primed for it. So that is really, really crucial. And this sets us up for the whole month. That this can look like journaling. How do I feel about how things are going? Where do I really want to go? What's the highest vision that I have for myself and for the business, right? Or the health coaching, or what am I really trying to do to help people? These are the questions that we want to answer in phase one. The reason we want to do that is because it goes on to phase two. Now, Meg, do you want to share a little bit about the whole when we don't plan and the experience of overwhelm and hating everything that you're seeing?
Oh yeah, that's a rough one. So, right in this phase one, I noticed that my brain would really turn on myself. Whereas later in the cycle, you might be irritated with everybody else. But at this point, I'm nitpicking, like, why didn't I plan that earlier? Why didn't I send that email on time? Why did I respond like that? Why did my hair look like that in that video? Just like nitpicking the heck out of everything I do and everything I don't do. And until I recognize that that is something that an unplanned brain and a brain without direction it can do during that time, I thought there was something wrong with me. So there comes the guilt and shame. Like, why am I so hard on myself? Like, I'm not normally so hard on myself. I'm pretty laid back. And I would notice it, same time every month. So recognizing that, I can implement all my tools of just like stop it, Megan, and shifting the thoughts. And also just knowing that when I do allow the space for downtime during that phase, then the overwhelm goes away. So that's just having a lot of awareness around what works well for you and opening up your schedule when you can to um, give yourself some rest so that then you are more productive and you can flow through the next part of it.
Totally. Yeah. So with the reason it matters so much is that the phase two is characterized by our ability and the setup that we are geared to take massive action during phase two. So a lot of women feel really good around this time, have higher energy, right? This is when our like libido goes up evolutionarily as we're ovulating. Things like this make sense. And so with that, it's not just libido as libido, it's just passion for our world and our outcomes and what we most want to get done. And right. So from that, if we are not clear on where we're going, if we don't have our GPS set in phase one and we're not rock solid on the things that we hope to accomplish that month, when our brain kicks into that higher energy state, it looks kind of like chaos. This is where you start like 4 projects at once. And, if you're listening, like raise your hand or take a screenshot and share with us on Instagram your story of this. But I mean, most of us who are entrepreneurs or have businesses in some capacity get to a point where we take on a whole bunch of stuff, and then later on, and we'll talk about when that is, the kind of poop hits the fan and we realize that we can't hold it all, or we do things that aren't even in alignment with our highest vision. We burn ourselves out, and then we look back and we go, that wasn't actually even that helpful. And Megan and I have done this time and time again, right? Where we were following other people's paths and we're like, well, they do it, we should do it too. And so we take on all this stuff and then we get to the end and realize we're exhausted and the outcome is not what we wanted. So we don't even get the benefit of the trade-off, because when you're doing things inconsistent with you, at some point there's going to be cracks in the foundation, right? We're not meant to do things meant for other people. We're meant to do the things that only we can do and create in the world. And so from that, we want to be really conscientious where we're using that energy for massive action. And that is why the phase one is so supportive of that, is that we get really clear. And then what happens is that out of the 1 to 3 things that we chose for that month, in phase two, every single day of that phase, or it doesn't have to be every single day, obviously take days off as you want them, but with the to-do list that we create, the 1 to 3 things that are on our to-do list for that day that are non-negotiables are a extension of the 1 to 3 things we set in phase one. They're not a random to-do list. They're not because you got emailed, right? They're not because you listened to that great James Wedmore podcast. And guess why I know how to use these examples? These are all things that Megan and I have done, using other people's things to create your to-do list rather than going back and saying, what's the most aligned thing for me to do right now? And therefore that makes the top of my list. Now, then you can have, if you have lots of energy and you're doing things, you can have other things on your to-do list, right? Answering emails, doing that stuff, whatever. But those aren't your, I wake up, I'm clear, or, in the afternoon, if that's when you work, I'm clear. These are the things I absolutely will get done today because that's going to be the biggest bang for my buck. And then anything else that I feel like doing or needs to happen, or, I'm following up on, then that can be lower down on the list. But it feels really different when you act from that, because you essentially go to bed every day that phase being like, I really showed up for my business. I showed up for my greatest vision because I got clear on it. And now my action is reinforcing the fact that, yes, it's important to me. Yes, this is what I believe. This is what I'm most passionate about, and I am doing it. And that's where we go to bed being like, I rock. I'm proud of myself. I'm grateful for myself. And then, of course, that feeds into, it's the opposite of guilt and shame. When we are proud of ourselves and appreciative of ourselves, it reinforces that, yes, we can do it. And then all of our actions come from that place, right? So that's phase two. Now, Megan, do you want to share a little bit about how you kind of do things from that massive action standpoint? Because you are really amazing at it.
Just how I implement.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do, my process is just like Dr. Alex says, is when I get really clear on like one, two, or three things that are going to move the needle the most, that is when I get amazing momentum. And sometimes those one, two, three things are just like knocked off pretty quickly. And I'm like, what else can I do? And that's a fun state to be in. Whereas when I used to just put all the to do, all the stuff, just anything that would pop in my head, right? Anything I had read about, anything I had heard about, and I felt all this pressure to do all the things, that immediately dropped me into overwhelm and I would do nothing. So getting clear on those top things and telling myself, after you do these, you can go take a walk in nature, you can go take multiple days off, or whatever it would motivate me to get the things done. And then a lot of times I would still have energy to then do the next thing, and I would get really excited about it. When I create space around projects, space to meditate, space to walk in nature, then I always am so much clearer and the project goes so much more quickly. When I am trying to get something done to relieve the pressure, when I'm just like, I just need this to be done so I no longer have pressure, which I now know is part of my human design, then it doesn't go well. I'm just trying to get it as a checklist item, and I may get it as a checklist item, and it always will end up with 5 new items. So it's the intention and the alignment for me, and just what am I trying to do this for? If it's just to relieve pressure, that's not a good motivator for me. If it's like to create this amazing thing, so I will feel excited and happy and at peace, and because I've shared this thing from my heart and I know it will help people, then those go really well. So that's how I kind of differentiate.
Mhm. Totally. And one of the kind of clues that you're acting from that place that Megan was talking about in terms of getting it done is that you'll have a to-do list and you will just go do the things that are simple and easy rather than the things that move things forward, right? So you can be like, I can cross off answering emails off my list, right? Because that needs to be done. And it's like, is answering emails creating the business and the life that you most desire? Probably not. I mean, we all have to answer emails, and there's a time and a place for that kind of thing. And that's where Megan's talking about, when we cross off the big things and show up for ourselves like that from a place of clarity, then answering emails is like, you just power through those and it gets done. And of course, we're not saying, only do the things you love in your business, because at some point we put in the time too. So this isn't an either or thing. But at the same time, we really have to be conscientious of what is that doing to our health and our energy. Because usually what happens when we do the easy things on our list, it's like we stay busy, we actually feel stressed out because we actually know we're not doing the big things, right? We don't have the outcomes, so then we feel bad about ourselves. And then guess what the brain is hearing? Guess what the hypothalamus is hearing? Guess what instructions your adrenals and your ovaries and your thyroid and your gut are getting? So this is where, again, it's easy to compartmentalize and say, like, I'm not quite doing what I need to do in my business, but that is not without consequences to our health and our self-esteem and our relationships either, right? So these are ways of encouraging ourselves to be complete in and of ourselves, and then from that place we act in our life altogether. So that is the reasoning behind doing it that way and why we think it's so, so important for especially people who are in the health field. It's our job to model what good health looks like for other people. And so if we are creating a business that's burning ourselves out, the discongruency between who we are attempting to show people we are and who we are will always be noticed, right? They'll always see that. And then, it kind of looks like being like, why did that thing flop? Like, why didn't I make any sales? Or why is no one interested in this? It's all comes back to our energy behind it. And our energy is our energy, no matter what category of life you're talking about. Okay, so then there's phase 3. So phase 3 is also very action oriented, and it's all about smaller steps that they're still action, but they're more like follow up, right? So our brains are at this point geared for more of the nitty gritty. So rather than the massive actions that move the needle forward, there's also activities in our business and in our life that look a lot less sexy than that, right? These are the things that, for example, one thing that we've really come to value from learning from James as a mentor so much is systems, right? So during the massive action times, this is when Megan and I create the guides, the programs, right? Videos, podcast series, all of this stuff looks like what you see and experience as part of being in our community. Then the follow up stage, though, is like, how do we turn that stuff into a business that's actually flowing behind us? So if we're always, innovating and we're acting as the CEOs of this company, how do we create a structure behind us? And that can look like, interns that work with us, our employees, our assistants, our contractors, are just how we set up our Dropbox, how we talk to one another inside our Google Drive, right? How do we email each other and share with each other documents that we're working on so that things don't get lost and we're communicating ideas back and forth? And so there's all of these very practical things that are part of the business that then need to be beefed up, because we've done all this, so honestly that's where it's coming from. But you can't always be innovating either, because there are seasons for things like that. And then sometimes there's not. And so in the times that we need to just put one foot in front of the other, this is what's really characterized by phase 3. So massive action is one, and then you follow it up with, what support do I need? What structures? And speaking of support, it can actually look like actually getting support, whether it's getting people to work with you, or like your best friend and your partner are your support structures for your personal life, right? So is this the week that you go have lunch with a girlfriend and get that support that you need? Or is it the time that you communicate with others, like reaching out to people in your space? Megan and I would not be where we are without having reached out and worked with other people in our area and like making friendships and being like, hey, you do this, we do this, we can synergistically work together, right? So communication is something that our brain is really geared for. So as we are, coming out of taking massive action and we're doing all of this follow up, a lot of times that's where it's very effective to interface with other people. Massive action a lot of times looks like, making that first contact, like, Megan reaching out to Byron Katie to have her on the podcast. But then the phase 3 is like, what questions was Megan going to ask Byron Katie? Right. And having that follow up and working with our accountability coach to like hash that out and work it out. So those are just some examples of how the two coincide together, and there's different flavors of action. Meg, you want to share anything about that
I
spot?
love just that you brought up Byron Katie. I think what will really be helpful, especially when we head into the phase 4, is just recognizing the things that are coming up for you that you can question. Because that's when I use Byron Katie's 4 questions the most, is in phase 4. And what's funny about certain things that you maybe have put on your list and you think in your head, oh, I can't do that. I thought, I can't ask Byron Katie to be on the podcast. She's just like this, an idol of mine. I love her work. She's amazing. And then I had done enough of the work, her work, and just working on my thoughts and my feelings and my beliefs around my worthiness, that one day during that phase 1, I was like, actually, I can ask her. I could just email them. I could just fill out the form. And it was such a simple actual task, right? The filling out the form took 10 seconds, right? Okay, maybe a minute. It was really fast. It was just that I hadn't gotten my beliefs up to speed. So there is this piece of, then as you head into phase 4, when things start to irritate you, you can start to question, what are my beliefs? Why are these coming up? Why am I scared to do this? Why am I having interactions with other people that are not positive? And then each month you get to question them. And as you work through them, you'll see, you clear them, and then you just do the thing. And she said, yes, it's not out yet, but it will be.
Yeah. And I think you said phase 1, but I think you meant phase 2 for the actual filling out of the form. Yeah. So it was like it unfolded
Yes,
when Megan sat down with, what's the goal? She was like, phase 1, I decide that this month is going to be the month it happens. Phase 2, she filled out the form. Phase 3, she wrote out the questions she wanted to talk about, and then she was all ready. And then she said yes, and bam. So that's a practical sense, and virtually everything that you see here that we've created works like that. So that's how we do it. So then there's this beautiful symmetry to nature, and us humans are no different. And so far we've had one more rest introspective one, 2 action externally oriented phases, and then we finish up with going back and turning internally. So this is where we reflect on how the last month went, and going inside to really make decisions around what information did we gather. Because what it really comes back to is that there's really no right and wrong when we are creating something that's never been, which is exactly what businesses and dreams are, right? Like, if it has never been created, then there's no right or wrong way to do it. So Megan and I come back to this idea over and over again, is that we are pioneering and being visionaries of an idea we have for women and how we can serve women. And there's no one else that can do things the way that we are built to do them, right? There's other people doing similar kind of work, but none of them are us. And none of them have our life experiences and our beliefs to create what we have as a vision. And so from that, when we reflect, we get to say without any judgment, out of the thing that I thought was the priority for this month, how did that go? How did it feel? What happened? Did that go the way that I intended it to go? Am I being led in another direction? Do I need to put a boundary someplace, right? So when we act and we do the things we need to do, it's always, this is my like interventional pain dot coming through, but it's diagnostic, right? Because when we do something and get information about it, it's always giving us feedback, whether it's perceived as good, perceived as bad, perceived as neutral, doesn't matter. It's always just, here's more information that then goes into considerations for the next month. And so it becomes this up leveling process every single time. But to get to that point, we need to have the time and space to actually reflect. Otherwise, we're like action, 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 action. And lo and behold, it's a year later and your business either isn't where you want it to be, or you created one that you actually hate. right? We're not creating new jobs for ourselves. We're creating a business that we are like passionate about. And so when we feel trapped inside our business and like we have to do this thing and it's this constant rat race, this is how it happens. When we have a phase every single month to do that sort of thinking and deciding, it's hard to get a year down the line and realize you hate it, because you'll catch it a whole lot earlier and live from that place. And then, like I said from the very beginning, it's just month after month after month. There's no stopping it unless we're no longer around. So there's just endless possibilities to reflect and make the decision about something else. The other thing that most people don't love hearing is that there's just time for pure rest for no other reason than we're building up reserves. And this one has been a really hard one for both of us, I think is fair to say. But especially, I know for me internally, it's been a really huge struggle in terms of what does rest look like, and believing that I'm just worthy of rest, not rest so that I can do more, not rest so that I can like meet my goals, rest just because I love myself enough to give myself care and love and respect. And boy, it took me a couple of years. It took me a lot of years, and I'm still, I think, working on this to really believe that. And so this is the time where when we push, we're like annoyed with everyone, we're irritable, our VA's bugging us because they're not doing the right thing, or we don't think, we probably haven't communicated that well to them anyways, and now we're mad about it. And we're yelling at the kids and snapping at our partner, right? Because those are all symptoms of our body and our state going, hey, you need to pay attention here, right? But we don't. A lot of times what we do is say, oh, I'm just a bad person and I'm just kind of a bitch, right? And then we feel guilty about it. And then we're like, if I just try harder, right, I'll wake up the next day and get all my to-do list done, and then I won't snap at my husband. Well, I think we all know what's down that road, right? Like a lot of us have been doing it for a couple of years and it's not changing. And so at that point, we really have to say, how do I show up for myself in a way that my body and my brain doesn't need to do this? What will happen a lot of times during this phase is that people go downhill and they crash. So instead of, controlled in a controlled environment, taking the time for rest and reflection and building that in ahead of time and acknowledging that it's coming, most people wait for them to be like crying and depressed that day with a huge headache. And now you're laying in bed being like, I have this huge to-do list and I'm not doing it. So your body will slow you down a lot of times one way or another. The question becomes, how can we not wait for that huge adrenal burnout? And Megan's going to talk to you guys about that in a minute. How do we prevent that big crash by buffering in the time? This is equivalent to taking rest days when you work out. No one says, not any expert says you work out 7 days a week forever, right? Everyone kind of knows that's not how it works. But for some reason, we don't apply that to working and creating our biggest goals and dreams. And we just kind of expect ourselves to just go, 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 go. And so as we take rest days, phase 4 is our rest day opportunity. And what Megan and Megan was alluding to this earlier, is that as we buffer those things in and we have reserves, then guess what? When we get to phase 1 again and we're dreaming big and we're having that vision, it's from a place where we're not hungry, angry, lonely, tired, right? That whole acronym, we're not underslept, undernourished, stressed the F out, right? Like how good are we going to be at being a visionary from that low, low, low place? It's It's virtually impossible. You can't see the forest for the trees when you're in a ditch, right? So, with that, as we go towards beefing up our reserves and really feeling good in our lives, phase one starts again, and phase one will start again. That's the thing. You can't stop that process, but that's how we really tank our adrenals and our HPA axis in the long term, is when we ignore this, go, go, go. And then inevitably the body will slow you down one way or another. So it would be nice to be in control of that rather than waiting for it to kick your butt across the floor. And again, no judgment, because we have totally done this. Yep. So then that's it. That is the cycle. And that is just over and over and over again.
Keeps going,
And
and it
yep,
gets better and better. And then
it does get better and better. Let us tell you what.
you optimize your health, you feel a little better, you have better ideas, you're able to take more downtime because you cruise through things during your good time, right? Like
You got support for it. You got
less.
structures.
Yeah, lots of structure. So we want to connect with you all. We want to connect with more women, and we've happened to attract lots of women in our Health Transformation Accelerator, are badass business owners. And that wasn't on purpose. It just seems to be who we're attracting lately, which excites us, because there's the goal of health, and then there's the goal of health to then create something amazing in the world, which just does excite us. So we're going to do, I'm going to run a Zoom connection workshop on May 20th, 2021, for when you're listening to this, but about around the idea of connecting with each other about building businesses without the adrenal burnout. This is, how do you align your adrenals and your business for success? This part, building a business, is talked about a lot. Working on health is talked about a lot, but the combination of the two can be really ignored, because, like Dr. Alex said, we kind of compartmentalize and we're like, we will work every day of the week and then we'll focus on our health later, right? So obviously we've found it works well the other way around. So we will put the link to join us in the show notes. And then also, for those of you who are really interested in this topic, if you're coaches, you're practitioners, and you want to add more of this into your practice, if you want to streamline a little bit more, also please go ahead and text us. You can text business to 757-767-5053. Also will be in the show notes if you're driving. Try to put that in now. So you can text us, and that will be a place where we'll be actually sending out, like, we're going live right now, or we're doing this, I have this resource right now. It'll be a little more interactive. You can text us directly on this line and we can start the conversation. We are always having women and coaches reach out to us about joining our team or working with us. And that excites us that there's so many of you. So we just want to support you all and get your feedback as well. Like, what works for you, what works in your business, and help each other out.
And notably, we won't be sharing the trainings and things all the time on our regular channels. So texting is the only way that you will know about this. So if you are interested in this topic, please make sure to text business to that number, so that you can stay up to speed. This is going to be, we've never shared any of the stuff that we're going to be sharing before, because we were mostly in helping women get to a place of good health. And now, as our community up levels, we're going to up level with you all and give you what is the most supportive for you right now. So this is where we're headed, right? And this is all part of our journey as well. And we're so honored to help kind of be guides along the way and help you avoid all of the adrenal burnout, the crying, the years of, not making money and doing things for free and being frustrated and all of that stuff. We, just like in our health, we want to show you the way that we found through trial and error, except for we'd rather just tell you the steps instead of actually just letting people suffer along the way. So thank you for being here. All right, Meg, do we have anything else to share with us?
That's a great point though about the texting, because you all who are here and still listening are a smaller percentage of our general audience. It's a smaller percentage who are kind of ready for that next step. So we will communicate with you directly, and we really would appreciate any feedback or anything you're looking for. Please text us. What is your biggest goal in business, and what is holding you back the most? We'd love to just hear the challenges that you're dealing with, and we'd love to hear what we can address in the Coaches Connect workshop.
Yep.
Have a great day.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare, and we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads, and we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting-edge information.
If you found these pod classes helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.